big piece of country. It stretched, some said, from Beelzebub to breakfast. Down the 100th meridian like this. Thing on this side of it, annual rainfall of less than 20 inches. The worst, some called it. Said all it lacked to be paradise, sea of water, and the real West lasted only about 40 years. It took place between two go-and-get-its and two hoops and a holler. And what went on in between was the whole westward movement. They called it the greatest mass migration since the Crusades. But for when, it was who? It was people, real people. They were pioneers and builders and destroyers, and all of them restless and dissatisfied. The contented ones stayed in the East. And those who wested, Bret Harte said, were those who needed a deal all around.
They gathered at the river, and the river was the gathering places: Westport Landing, Leavenworth and Omaha, Fort Smith and Independence. And the river townsmen who would stay behind watched the immigrants as they rendezvoused and waited for the grass to spring on the Oregon Trail, to the Valley of the Willamette, on the Santa Fe and California trails, to the golden slopes of the Sierras. Here was the last outpost of civilization. It'll come hard, wrote one pioneer, to have to say goodbye to so much elegance and refinement. West of here, cash money would have no value. So it was swapped off for things that would: coffee and ship's biscuit, hog tallow and dried apples, wagon tires and quinine, revolving pistols and gold separating machinery, and patented plows. And maybe a small sack of peppermint striped candy. Trains of wagons were formed up and organized into emigrant companies. Many of them pooled their sold shares of stock, had their own bylaws and officers. Articles were drawn up and signed by members who had to swear that they were industrious, not addicted to cards, strong drink or profane language, and of sweet and peaceable disposition. Many men signed with their real names. It seemed to one observer that this was the grandest transmigration of greenhorns since the children of Israel set out to reach Canaan. Sinners and saints, the wise and the innocent. One of them said, "We are a mixed lot, but so were the first pilgrims." Most of the new pilgrims would take nothing with them but hope and whatever could be stowed in the wagon. And a few took nothing with them but memories of places they would never see again. Like 3 Ohio teenagers running away from home to find gold and fight Indians. New Jersey newlyweds off to build a nest in the New Eden. A Hartford widow hoping to find a new husband and father for her children. A Charleston pianoforte maker deserting his wife and his creditors. A foreclosed York State farmer looking for greener and unmortgaged pastures. A Mississippi Monte dealer seeking fatter fish and less troubled waters. A seminary graduate looking for an uncultivated vineyard in which to labor. And to lead them all into the wilderness, they would engage a professional wagon master with the authority of a sea captain and the honorary title of major. These, then, were the ones who went west. They and thousands like and unlike them. They went in wagons and carts and buggies, and some walked all the way. More than 2,500 miles. They had 3 basic motives for get something and just there. You out of affliction into a land flowing with milk and honey. The Overland Trail, the longest road in history, was a river of white-topped wagons. We haven't seen either end of our train in 18 days, wrote one immigrant. The teams of those ahead of them had eaten most of the trail grass, so they had to feed their mules on precious grain they'd saved for the desert. For 1,000 miles they followed, they called it, and it took so many bends that one party crossed the river 20 times. The early ones found shallow water. The late starters would meet the spring floods. They camped in the heat of the day. They called it nooning. It gave them a chance to visit and catch up on their housekeeping. This gypsy life is anything but agreeable, one woman wrote. It is impossible to keep anything clean. Cooking and water are often harsh with alkali. Baby towels must be put on while still damp, a mother complained. For small infants, overlanding could be one long diaper rash, which lowered their resistance to disease. And no family could travel too fast for cholera. Immigrants' guidebooks were reassuring. Prairie navigation is simple. Merely follow the wheel ruts of the wagons which have preceded you. If you travel at the normal rate for oxen of 3 miles a day, there are enough natural beacons so that you will never need a compass. The atmosphere is so clear that landmarks like Chimney Rock will be observable for weeks before they are reached. It might have added that the immigrants, too, would be under observation. The first sight of Indians kindled fears of feathered and fiery death. For the women, a fate worse than death. The immigrants were indignant to discover that even the friendliest tribes considered them not pioneers, but trespassers. They parley only to extort outrageous tribute for grass and firewood and the loss of some game frightened by our wagons. They are friendly only so long as it serves their purpose, and only if you are well armed and look resolute. How long will government tolerate these savage impediments to progress and industry? It is 3 months since we left independence. Hardship and disease have cruelly reduced our party. The aged and very young die first. The women persevere best and set a brave example. But our journey is only half made. Who of us will trail split? Here they had to choose between the desert and the mountains. The high road was the shortest as the crow flies, but it was mostly eagles which tried it, and the clumsy, top-heavy wagons which struggled to reach the passes before they were wintered in. They had to hurry to beat the first snow, and to avoid the fate of the Donner Party, 45 of whom survived only by eating the bodies of the 36 who didn't. Over the Wind Rivers, the Bitterroots, the Wasatch, the Panamints, the High Sierras, beyond every mountain, it seemed, there was another mountain. But if there was danger in the mountains, there was no safety at sea level. One traveler wrote of the desert trails, it was as though the hand of death had been laid upon the country. Where it was Apache country, death had a few extra hands. We have just learned that the party ahead of us has nearly perished of thirst, and there is one behind us carrying the smallpox. It is more than 100 degrees of heat. Truly we are traversing hell with the fires banked. It is milestoned with what once were precious belongings. But such sentiments are too burdensome for exhausted horses. Our map promised that at this place we could find good grass and water, but it lied. The grass was poisonous and the spring was dry. Another company had traveled without water, then almost drowned in a cloudburst. Their stock stampeded and their wagons, the wood desiccated in the heat, fell apart. Our cattle sickened on the water and foundered and had to be left behind. But ours was not the only loss. Dead animals averaged 100 to the mile. And an emigrant's diary said there are about 80 graves to the 100 miles, that is, new ones. Each of these marked the high water point of somebody's hopes. All of them strung together marked the trail for others, just as hopeful, to follow. In the great getting there were no failures. They all put down their roots in the new land, even these.
If the way west was a river of wagons, then the strongest current was the gold rush. Not just the one in 49. There were actually 7 gold rushes. More than that if you count the runs for silver, gold and silver, copper. In fact, anything shiny that would assay out to that dream of getting rich without working. It was that dream that sent them out, singing their Susannas that they were off to Sacramento with their wash bowls on their knees, off to see the elephant. California or bust, Washoe or bust, Pikes Peak or bust, the Black Hills or bust. Most of them got there and some of them busted. But the real noise was boom. Wherever there was a rumor and a hole in the ground, they Jerry built the camp around it.
And they christened them Brandy Gulch and Piety Hill, Hell's Delight and Gougi, Never Sweat and Sled, and Petticoat Slide, Romeosburg and Julietsville. Each one claimed it was built spang on top of the mother lode and its main street would be cobbled with golden nuggets. But the camps were really founded on the bedrock belief that the West was, as advertised, so rich in mineral wealth that King Solomon's mines are simply out of the running. Discovery of rubies, emeralds, and fossilized pearls are expected momentarily. In the meanwhile, of course, the town could always mine the miners. Back in the States, young men were getting letters saying, "There are mighty few ladies here, and they don't come close to handsome, but that's not held against them." Anyway, Sabbath breaking is the principal preoccupation, along with wholesale consumption of grain spirits. The local liquors contain 1,000 songs and 100 fights to the barrel. Sell your mule, Bill, burn your farm, and rent your church pew, and come out here where things are doing. Everyone should be a millionaire. They say if you wash your face in the Yellowstone River, you can pan 4 ounces of dust out of your whiskers. If you stump your toe on a rock in Montana, don't. Have you heard there's a solid silver mountain in the Panamints? And in Dakota, window curtains assay out $1 to the ton after a dust storm. Rumors. And every one sent thousands of would-be millionaires up nameless creeks to wash away nameless mountains, a pound at a time, and to slosh them over the riffles of a sluice box. But placer mining, picking it up off the ground to play out. Glory holes had to be deepened, lengthened into tunnels and galleries. They never worked so hard in their lives to get rich without working. Some did strike it rich, enough to keep the others grubbing away at what an Eastern paper called a lunatic asylum. Every Lucky Cuss mine, every Comstock, miles of tunnels were vain disappointment. I couldn't make money on my claim if I fell down the shaft at $7. A suspended sentence. High-grade ore better to extract with just a sharp stick. Money utilized in the machinery, stamp equipment, of hard rock miner in shifts, being paid from west. Mining without the low-grade ore and sending by stockholders. It was time for the jackhammer to move out. Besides, the true bonanza was written where the grass was a little. Inspector's compass, and always follow. To the golden boulders, always the solid silver mountain, the lost Dutchman, the Phantom Peralta. Somebody had to search for them. Colorado.